I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the next reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Tar is over. The problem with enrolling yourself as an ultrasonic epistemic dissident is that if Bach's talent can be reduced to his gender, birth, country, religion, sexuality, and so on, then so can yours.
You want to dance the masque, you must service the composer.
If you're here, then you already know who she is. Lydia Tár is many things. As a conductor, Tár began her career with the Cleveland Orchestra, Chicago Symphony Orchestra, the Boston Symphony Orchestra, until she at last arrived here at our own New York Philharmonic. In 2013, Berlin elected Tár as its principal conductor, and she's remained there ever since. Lydia Tár has also written music for the stage and screen. She is one of only 15 EGOTs, meaning those who have won all 4 major entertainment awards. Thank you for joining us, Maestro.
Thank you.
How's the writing going?
Not so well. I keep hearing something.
Schopenhauer measured a man's intelligence against his sensitivity to noise.
Do you ever find yourself overwhelmed by emotion?
Yes. Yes, that does happen.
Tar. Andy, this movie is so much better with sound.
Yeah, right? That's, I think the lesson learned is that, you know, if somebody in an airplane is playing a movie a couple rows up across the aisle, maybe just look away.
That is true. That's how I saw the movie, and I did my best to read all the subtitles, and I legitimately thought I understood what the movie was about. I think I did. I think I could have told you what the movie was about, but I didn't understand what the movie was about. You know what I mean? Like, Oh my goodness, this movie is great with sound on a big screen. It is just really, it was made, you guys, this movie was made to be seen on the big screen with sound.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Exactly right.
You guys, wait a minute. Don't watch this across the aisle on somebody else's iPad with no headphones. like I'm the first person. I could say I'm probably the first person to come up with this.
It's like they invent screens to watch these things in big auditoriums. Isn't that funny?
If you watch it that way, you don't get to count it as a watch on Letterboxd. Let's just say that. There are ground rules.
Okay, so first, before we kick off this conversation, this is, of course, the third in our 2023 DGA Awards Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Theatrical Feature Film Nominees series.
That's
We've only
too
got
long.
2 more. It's a long title. It's a really long title. We only have 2 more after this, Top Gun, Maverick, and Everything Everywhere All at Once. Okay, Todd Field, not a prolific director. He's got 3 films.
Right. Have you seen all of Todd Field's films? He's done a lot of TV, but it's been a long time.
I have seen all 3 of his films, saw them all in the theater, and I think it's fair to say from just his small body of work that he's like a director who I really admire, because I think he's so incredibly strong with the projects that he's putting out there.
Well, unlike you, I don't even need to have seen the other 2 films to call him a director I really admire. I'll go ahead and do that with just the one.
In other words, you have not seen In the Bedroom, nor have you seen Little Children.
No, those were new to me.
Well, let me tell you, they're highly, highly worth watching.
Okay. Were they as good as Tar?
Tar, for me, is like a perfect cinema experience. It's a perfect piece of film. Those other 2, I honestly need to revisit. I don't think that I felt like walking out of them the way I felt with Tar, but I think that they're both amazing, amazing experiences.
Okay. All right. So 4 stars, maybe with some quibbles, is what you're teasing.
No, they're all
with.
5-star films.
No, I'm just saying probably today's going to be 4 stars with quibbles. That's fine. We'll get there. We'll make the case. Okay. So Tar. How do you want to approach Tar? Because it's what are there kind of 3 major themes going on in here that I think are worth talking about? How do you want to start?
I mean, that's a good question. I suppose in the spirit of a recent episode where I don't even want to bring it up because I don't want to give it away specifics, but let's just say in the spirit of following a character who you could kind of say is our antagonist, right? Lydia Tár is a very difficult character. She is in the way that like you kind of unfortunately maybe expect certain people in powerful positions to behave. Like, she's one of those people who has the assistant constantly tailing her, sticks her hand out to have the water bottle perfectly placed so that she can take a drink. Like, she's that sort of person. But over the course of it, we also start getting a sense that she lies really well. She manipulates incredibly well. Like, she's constantly playing these games with everybody. And that's, I think, the thing that one of these, in the varieties of different themes and topics with this film, watching Lydia in action, I think, is a frightening exploration of how people in power behave and how they start using their power and their position to kind of manipulate everything around them to make sure they're always ahead. And we just happen to be watching a character who all those pieces finally start falling apart. And that's kind of a lot of the crux of the film. But I mean, I think that's an interesting element with this film, especially in today's eyes. In a story about #MeToo, we're watching a story about, as she calls herself, a U-Haul lesbian.
Right. Right.
I don't know what
that is.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but that's what she calls herself. So she's a lesbian. She's, a woman working essentially, we'll call it in a man's world. Granted, they talk about how there are other women conductors out there, but that's kind of the story. But it's an interesting exploration of really a person in a powerful position who can manipulate these situations, get what she wants, and kind of destroy lives around her. And that's, I think, an interesting element, just an interesting place to kind of start the conversation.
Okay, we need sidebar. May we do a sidebar? Please cue the sidebar music.
Did you look up U-Haul lesbian?
Oh, yeah. No, I got you.
Okay, good.
So a U-Haul lesbian is a stereotype of a lesbian relationship referring to the idea that lesbians tend to move in together after a short period of time, e.g. after the second date. It suggests an extreme inclination toward committed relationships depending on context. The term can be considered humorous, complimentary, or pejorative. Very broad use. The joke is, what does a lesbian bring on a second date? A U-Haul. But the best part is that the Wikipedia page for the standard image to actually support this page about U-Haul lesbians is just a U-Haul. And the caption is a 26-foot U-Haul truck.
For people in different parts of the world who are like, what is a U-Haul?
What is a U-Haul? Right.
That's funny. Yeah, very
What
funny.
does a gay man bring on a second date?
Is this a trend of like they have all the different joke iterations of this?
It's just the next date, the next joke that's funny. So what does a gay man bring on a second date? What second date? Get it? Like there is no second date. Gay men don't go on second dates. That's the joke. So a lesbian brings a U-Haul. Gay men don't have second dates. That's the joke. All right. Anyway, so the sidebar is over.
Yeah. So anyway. Tár, power, destruction.
That was it. Okay, and this is the thing I find kind of magical about this movie, because all the stuff that you said is true, right? Like this is about a person whose own, and I would say led by her artistic genius, right? She is lauded as a genius in the field. She is a female conductor of the Berlin Philharmonic, right? That's a big deal. And that artistic authority has given her power that she almost can't help but wield in a way that is negative. The thing about this movie that I love so much is that the case that the movie builds is almost that she has no choice. Like she has been totally bastardized by the environment in which she works and performs. And it makes the case that it's inevitable for somebody of this caliber to behave this way and get so twisted by that power that of course, like, how could she not decide to lie to everybody about the death of her former mentee? How could she not let go of the assistant that has worked so diligently to support her when the assistant wants to become assistant conductor for the symphony, and then say no? Because of course we know that she can't afford to lose that assistant. The assistant's too valuable to her. So I mean, they're just around every corner, her behavior is twisted and yet inevitable. And I think that is, talking about the sleight of hand of the movie, that's the sleight of hand of the movie, that her ideology is set up right up front when she's speaking to the class, guest speaking to the conducting class, and plays out over the course of the movie inevitably. I think it's incredible.
There's this element of control that a character like Lydia needs to have, right? And we see her wielding control in all of the decisions, and also finding ways to sell it to people in ways that they're like, yeah, that's fine, I agree with you, even though they're like, really? Is that right? Like the way that she pitches the idea of, it's when she decides the second, or the piece that's going to accompany their performance of Mahler's Five that they're going to perform, and how she sells that to the orchestra, like, I've decided this Elgar piece, and everyone's like, oh, this is great. She's like, but I think, the first chair cello is you're going to be really tired for this. So I think, because that's really going to take it out of you. So I think, I was thinking maybe we should just have auditions and see who would work. And, it's fine if we don't want to do it. Let's just do, a poll. You think about it and let me know. And everyone kind of eventually is tapping their little things in agreement and kind of going along with the idea, even though everyone's like, this sounds ridiculous. And same thing when they're doing the auditions and they mention that the woman that we know that the reason she's doing all of this is because she's attracted to this woman who is the Russian cellist, but she's not officially a part of the orchestra yet. She has not been offered it. She's kind of there on a temp basis, but she's great. Of the two people who actually show up to perform, she's one of them. She's the better option, but, they bring up, well, except she's not part of it. We'd have to figure that out. And Lydia's like, you know what? You're right. Okay, call the other guy back. He's got the part. And everyone's like, no. And they turn around because, she's right. The other person clearly was better and is the stronger player in that particular case. But that's exactly how Tár was manipulating them the whole time. Like, it's this method of control that she has of playing against them and giving them what they want and saying, oh, no, you're right. Let's call the other guy back instead, knowing that they're going to turn. And I think that is what is really fascinating to watch with her character, and incredibly frightening as we see this happening over and over and over again, whether it's the affairs she's having or things that she's doing when she's firing people, like the way that she turns it on the guy who she's firing against him, like, whew.
Ugh, awful. Yeah, I think that this is a display of passive aggression as an art form, right? That level of manipulation and gaslighting that she is able to use because of her authority, because of her artistic genius, in heavy air quotes. Like, she's able to manipulate at the same level of art of her conducting, right? Like, she's incredible at it.
No, that's the power of the character. And that's, it's that whole absolute power corrupts absolutely sort of thing. Like, she's in a position now where she can make these plays and make these attacks, but while people may disagree with her, they kind of go along with it because, oh, okay, yeah, it's all for the better of the orchestra. And that's really what she's trying to do, Yeah. Right.
So there's the abuse of power and artistic genius angle. The other side of this is, I guess at first, because I think this is kind of the first argument the movie makes, or the first position the movie takes, is it positions her as an antagonist against youth perspectives on art versus the artist. What did you think of how this perspective was levied in the film?
there's also the angle of gender, which we'll certainly tackle in this conversation too, which is another huge thing. But yeah, when we get to that scene when which is, I don't know if you were paying attention, but is an amazing oneer, that whole scene, like fantastically crafted. Her conversation with the class at Juilliard, and specifically how she kind of singles out Max and I mean, uses him kind of as an example. I mean, he's the one who's kind of conducting in this exercise, so it makes sense. It's not like she picked on him, although she does.
Although she picks on him.
She kind of picks on him. But it's such a fascinating conversation. And I find it so fascinating because largely I agree with her. Like, there are some terrible, terrible people out there in the world, and a lot of them have done some amazing art and amazing crafts and things like that it's just really amazing to look at and appreciate. And to that end, I agree. Like, it's hard to dismiss Bach because of some of the things he did, knowing the music that he did. And I do think that there's a sense of, if you want to be a conductor and a composer, it's important to study those people. It doesn't mean you necessarily need to like play them later in life and things like that. But I also think, on the flip side of that, I think people like Lydia need to understand that things are changing. And while it's important to appreciate and understand all of that stuff that's out there and how meaningful some of that can be, and just where that sort of that music can take you and what it can teach you, there's also new people composing and conducting and composing and writing these amazing pieces that are worth also exploring and getting a sense as to how things have changed and where is music moving, and are there new composers that she should be looking at and kind of discussing and thinking about in different ways that have passed some of those barriers and aren't necessarily as looking at them as having issues with some of the ethics of some of those people. And as Max, a BIPOC person in the field, I think that it's very important for people like Max to feel like there's representation for me here. And I think that's the thing that I don't think somebody like Lydia really understands.
Yeah, this was complicated because I think that argument needed to happen in the movie, and his perspective is fantastic and should have won the argument, right? Like, it should have won in that discussion between old and new in that setting, right? In an educational setting. And it didn't, because of all the other authority baggage that Lydia brings as a famous person. And she was lobbing those stones at him in a way that he could not keep up with as a student, right? He had to eventually just take himself out of the conversation and not be able to hold on to it. Her perspective also is important, and that's the impasse that they're at, right? Her perspective is, first of all, celebrate the greats for the reason that they are the greats, not for the things that they've done that have gotten in the way of our interpretation of them, but celebrate them in a way that they have created these exalted sounds and compositions that have changed the world in their way. And so, how can we both celebrate those things and recognize that the artist, the composer, was subject to his own mental health, his own ideology, his own global context at the time? I think it's just fascinating, the attention that they played in this incredible oneer to watching her dismantle his ideology with language and authority. I mean, her character is written to a razor sharp point. Like, it's incredible, and she just takes him apart atomically through, again, words that he was just not able to truck with. He wasn't able to keep up.
It's interesting because there's an interesting element of guest speakers in classes, and the value of having guest speakers who have world experience, who can be providing stuff for your students. But I also think, and this is hard for people who are set in their ways. I mean, in our pre-show chat, we were talking about Richard Dreyfuss and the trouble he's in now with some of the things that he said at a screening. As you're getting older, you kind of get set in your ways, and people around you are changing, and the world's changing. And I think there's an interesting element to guest speakers who are experienced, but trying to find a way to have a sense of understanding and connection with the younger mind and the younger audience as to how they're experiencing the world and finding things in the world. And I think it's hard for people who are guest speakers, but I think it's ever more important.
Yeah, I think that scene is sometimes we talk about the signature scenes of the movie. That for me is a signature scene of the movie. That represents just about everything, especially because as the movie progresses, she ends up in a place at the end of the movie where she is taken down by and canceled effectively by her own arguments. I think that's just awesome.
Yeah. The gender dynamics in the film, I think, are very much worth discussing because, I mean, the film starts off with Lydia Tár on stage. I mean, it doesn't. There's a few interesting things beforehand, which we'll certainly talk about, like the way that the film starts, which is unorthodox in the fact that we get a lot of credits at the start of the film, like a lot of the typical end credits. And I think that's such an interesting thing.
Right?
Yeah,
it felt like I was watching something in the 40s or 50s.
Although except we're not getting a lot of the big ones. It's just like the orchestras, and it's like
celebrating the music.
It felt like a playbill almost, like you're kind of listening to some music while you go through that. But then you have some interesting scenes of like somebody filming her alive and texting about it. So we'll certainly talk about that. But she goes to this interview with Adam Gopnik, who interviews her as Lydia Tár on stage. And it's a fascinating way to just get a lot of exposition out about her character in an interview setting. We can hear how planned everything is. I don't know. We see her assistant talking about or kind of mouthing the interview questions as Adam is saying it. So we know that Lydia's planned everything, but the way that she is performative in her answers, knowing that we've seen her assistant doing that, we assume that Lydia's planned how she's going to respond to each of these questions. And it's kind of brilliant. But I mean, the point, I guess, is there's a lot about gender dynamics in that conversation. And this is traditionally a male-dominated field. She is a woman in this field. She talks about some other women who have also faced these challenges and stood tall in it. But I think that's a big part of the gender dynamics because in a world of kind of this Me Too, there is this interesting flip on it here because she uses her power with her gender dynamics in these relationships, this threesome that she ended up having with her assistant and this other girl that we never really see, but we find out, well, we do actually see in the beginning of the film. There's an interesting story about gender here. I don't know. How do you feel that played out in the film?
I don't know. Part of me goes back to reading the comments that Marin Alsop had for the film and for Cate Blanchett's performance and the fact that the film was, I think a lot of people in the music business saw the parallels between Tár and Alsop, and Alsop specifically said, "I'm offended as a conductor. I'm offended as a woman. I'm offended as a lesbian. Like she's offended on all that. Check all the boxes. She's offended by them because they take this opportunity to showcase this incredibly powerful genius woman conductor and make her an abuser, which is just." I mean, the performance that I came back to was Malice with Alec Baldwin, right? That's the parallel performance that I kept thinking about in my mind. That here is this guy who is a genius in his space, and he is an abuser, but he believes that he is above it all, and because of his genius and his authority in the field, and that's kind of where we are with Tár. And so the flipping on its head is before this movie, how many other principal characters who are abusers in positions of genius and power were played by women, and there aren't probably as many. I'm not thinking, I can't really litigate that list right off the top of my head, but I don't think there are as many as there are men. There just aren't the parts. I'm sorry, women, there aren't enough parts of being really bad. in art, science, and music. And I think that's what I think is so interesting. And what is so interesting about Cate Blanchett's performance in here is that Blanchett is able to deliver a believable performance of somebody who is so diabolical that tends to be performed from a masculine perspective. And that's a thing that gives this movie kind of a shining light for me, that it is different. And so that gender role that we have the entire scope of good, bad, and different in this movie, and they're all played by women, is awesome, right? It's like illuminating that we've shaken so many stereotypes in writing the film by making all of the ideological spectrum represented by women.
Yeah.
And the men who are in here are subservient, right? Like they're the assistant conductor. They're the guy who she tackled at the end. Mark Strong, right? Who is portrayed as kind of a doofus in the beginning and ends up copying other people's work. And she punches him repeatedly. Like what a fantastically twisted perspective on male-female dynamics in positions of power. They're both conductors, and she takes the snot out of him.
Yeah, and it's such a fascinating look at this world, and I enjoy what it's saying about identity, and I mean it all ostensibly ties together, just kind of like the power plays she has, but also as a woman, as a lesbian, you could say some of the power and control she's trying to take is because she is in a world of straight white men.
Yes.
And so she's trying to stand tall in this field. Like there is an element you can see that, and I think that is a really interesting aspect of it. Another aspect that I think comes from all of that is this sense of, and the story does this in such a fascinating way, depicting how Lydia has grown isolated from everybody over the course of the story. Like she's put herself into this position of power where she's kind of alone, right? Like the only real person that she communicates with outside of her partner and her daughter is her assistant. Like that's the only other person that she's really communicating with. Everyone else is like business relationships. And even when she communicates with her assistant, especially as we go through the film, it's less and less in a personal way. Like she starts being drawn to this woman after the Q&A right away. And we see that suddenly when she comes home, she's got this new red bag, which happened to be the red bag that woman had. It's like, oh, okay, we're seeing exactly the sort of person Lydia is over the course of this story. And she becomes more and more isolated and alienated from everyone else. And the way that the film kind of portrays a lot of that is this sense of haunted, like being haunted, like she's jogging a lot. She has that experience where she's jogging through the trees all by herself, and suddenly she starts hearing like screaming off in the distance, which sounds like maybe somebody getting murdered or attacked or raped or God knows what. She never can figure out where it's coming from. It's just this scream, this haunting scream in the middle of nowhere. Side note, that scream was the audio of Heather Donahue from the climax of the Blair Witch Project. They used the audio from that, which is really funny.
That's
but
awesome.
There are ghosts in the film, like several times. If you can catch a figure standing in the shot, once when she first comes back home into her own apartment and she's kind of walking through it, and in the back, in the distance, you see a figure standing there that it's never really addressed. It's just a ghost that's back there. And then later it's a scene where she wakes up in the middle of the night to their daughter crying out for her, and she gets up and goes to her, but as she passes by, there's a figure standing there. So there's like these ghosts haunting her. When she goes into Olga's house or that ratty old apartment complex to try giving her the little bear that she left, there's this like, what are the sounds that draw her into the basement? And the dog appears. Like all of these things, like she is in this situation where she can't talk to anybody about this, but she's just like more and more like isolated. It's kind of powerful the way that she's kind of created this world for herself.
Right. That's sort of the symbolism of shame and guilt that is kind of rearing up, but she doesn't have any sort of receptor to understand that that's what she's feeling because it's so foreign to her, because she's always in such control and such power. And that gap is where the second act sort of thriller lives, right? Where the terror lives before we twist into the actual investigation and we start seeing, people asking actual questions and deposition talk and all those kinds of legal things, leading to her ultimate shunning as far as we get.
Well, and we see what happens with all the manipulation she's been doing constantly over the course of the film, manipulating her assistant and then sneaking onto her assistant's computer to see she hasn't deleted all those emails that they had about Krista.
I didn't care for that at all. I didn't care for that. It was don't mess with other people's tech.
Well, but again, I don't think that Francesca was excited about the idea, but I think that she felt obligated because the way that, again, going back to the control and the way that Lydia manipulated that situation to say, my computer's on the fritz, just give me yours. I just need to get this done real quick. Like, it's frightening the way that she uses her power to do these things.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's such an interesting thing, the back half of the movie, that they turn it into, what is ostensibly a personality drama into a straight up thriller, right? Into a murder thriller. And I thought I thought that the tonal sort of evolution of the film was interesting and beautiful and threatening. And this was something I was thinking about with that wonder you're talking about, but I think it's representative of the rest of the movie. There aren't very many scenes in the movie that end when I thought they would. And you would think that the implication of that statement is that most scenes were too long, but that is absolutely not the case, right? The movie, every scene is longer than it should be by my expectation, and every bit as long as it needed to be for what they're trying to get out of it. And I thought that was incredible to me. Like this movie is slowly paced, and yet it did not feel long.
No. And I think that's just because the characters are engrossing. Like, it's fascinating to watch Lydia as she maneuvers through all of these different situations. And it's interesting because for a film that ostensibly has such a dark and twisted and manipulative and narcissistic protagonist, we'll just say, like, she is incredibly compelling to watch, and it's Cate Blanchett, so that probably is a big draw too, because we've seen her in so many things and love her in so many things. But this is the sort of thing that I think for some people it's like hard to watch a character like this for 2.5 hours, but she makes it work. She's just kind of gripping. And as you said, with these mysteries, with these little things like the scream in the forest or any of these little things that happen over the course of the film, it builds this tension that you kind of don't expect in a film like this. A drama about an orchestra conductor. On the surface, it doesn't sound engrossing, but once you see what they're doing with it, I think that's where things really shift. And the way that everything kind of builds to that deposition and the unveiling of who Lydia Tár really is.
What'd you think of the conducting? Speaking musically now.
I think it's fantastic. I know that Cate Blanchett had to learn how to conduct for the film. She had to learn how to speak German, and there's a lot of things. But I think that she looks great doing it. I in the scope of performative conductors, I guess we're in a string of them. Bradley Cooper did one. I heard there's another one coming out, I think, about a Romanian conductor. There's this trend right now to explore this field, which is pretty interesting. I enjoy watching it. I think it's interesting. And I think I learned more about the art of conducting from her in this and that exploration of time. And I think that's a really interesting element here where you're seeing kind of the movement of time and how a conductor controls time. And in a story about control, I think there's a lot of that with the conductor and how she gets to control this group of people to manipulate them into doing exactly what she wants, right? I think that's a fascinating element. And I think that there's this sense, speaking of time, of just how time relates in a story like this and how time ends up kind of folding upon itself. And we get this sense of Lydia's past and present all kind of coming together over the course of the story. You know, the little flashes in her dreams of that man in Peru, the indigenous person from Peru. She has got a picture of him in her house, but he pops up in one of her dreams. Like it's like this folding of time, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, as she talks about in that early interview, you know, my left hand stops time, and I know when time is going to come back online. And she does that whole speech. I thought that was really great because the movie is made with that in mind. Like, it feels of a piece with that argument and that logic, the time logic. I mean, she's been apart from Marin Alsop. I think your comments are, you know, just sort of foreshadowing to the level of praise that she got for actually, learning to conduct, learning to play the piano, learning to speak German, learning to do all those things, and to do so at a level where professional musicians would largely tell her that say that she's done some incredible work doing this and contributing significantly to the art form by demonstrating what a conductor does. Because I think part of the movie is there is some defensive conducting, right? As people poke at, what is your purpose? What is your purpose as a conductor? Do we really need you? Do you really, what do you really do when you're standing up there? And she has a position on all those things. And the fact that the movie gives her a chance to defend her role and her place as genius is kind of a defense of what a conductor does. And I mean, I don't know. I've taken a conducting class.
Oh, wow.
In high school.
Than most people.
Yeah. No, we were. You do it as part of music. And so I'd say my understanding of conducting is rudimentary. I don't know how to make my hands do in time what conductors do without falling down. Like, I can't walk and chew gum at the same time. That's the level of, like, there's a lot of complicated stuff that you're doing with your hands that doesn't make sense to me. I never got the hang of it. So to wield the attention of 60, 100 people sitting on stage and following you is incredible. And I think her performance, over the top performance, demonstrates a level of emotional engagement with music that hasn't been portrayed until this sort of crop of conductor movies. I think Maestro is, Bradley Cooper is another one that just sort of achieved that emotional connection with the music as a conductor, which I think is lovely. So, and
such an interesting connection because she talks about Lenny and like that, that relationship that they had and the inspiration. And that's, in the scope of characters, like, or conductors, I should say, who were very open about what a conductor does, how a conductor works. Like, Bernstein really pushed that in ways that I don't think any conductor before or since has, like with the shows, the programs that he would do and everything, and kind of talking about to the audience, like, this is what we're doing, this is how it works. And I think that's such an interesting element. And that's what I find so interesting because, going back to the idea of past and the present, after everything in her world collapses and she attacks Elliot on the stage and she pretty much is shunned, her PR team doesn't know what to do with her. She goes back to her family house and she's looking around at all of her stuff and finding, like, we find out her real name is Lydia Tár, Tarr. She's changed her name. And we get a sense of who she was. And she puts on her little medal, like something that she had won. She has it around her neck. She pulls a VHS out of one of her recordings of Bernstein in kind of talking about performances and everything, and hears that. And I think that was the moment that she's reconnecting with the youth, which some people online have talked about how the ghost that we see over the course of the film is her younger self, which I think is really interesting. But this idea of reconnecting with this self that's been haunting her, like this older version of herself that had the passion for music and kind of lost it with the power. And she sees it, reconnects with it there. And perhaps that is why at the end of the film, we see her going over to, I think they filmed it in Thailand, but I think it's meant to be the Philippines, where she ends up basically conducting for a live orchestra screening of a video game movie at a convention, basically, which I think is just fantastic. Like, especially some of the lines that the characters are saying as everything begins. It's like it fits so perfectly with her. And like, it made me laugh so much when she's first talking to the people. We don't know what's going on. We just know she's somewhere over there. But she has this moment where she's just like, well, I was looking for the music, the sheet music in the library, but I couldn't find it anywhere. And they like, oh, well, we have it here. And we're sorry, but the conductor is not going to be, or the composer is not going to be able to join for the performance. Like all of these things, which is just like, it's setting us up for the joke that this is what the screening is. But I love the way that it all played out.
Well, the video game was Monster Hunter.
Yes.
And the audience of cosplayers just slays at the end, her final reveal. That was incredible.
Yeah, it was pretty perfect.
It was really great. I think that twist at the end when she goes home was a surprise, right? That was a interesting surprise, talking about forgetting her roots. And it brings me back to the beginning of the movie when you see the meticulousness through which she gets herself clothed, right? Like the way she gets these bespoke collars and shirts and everything made from scratch in a way that just fits her perfectly. That feels to me like the setup for the meeting with her brother, which is not only did you change your name, but you've had to go to great lengths to change your identity, the superficialness of your identity, as in what you wear. And part of that, you can say, well, she's a genius and she's a performer, and this is just what they do. They get their clothes made, and that's how it works. And that's true. But also, I think what matters is why. Like, why does she do that? Did she start getting her clothes made because she was trying to fit a role that wasn't necessarily hers to begin with? Like, to what degree is Tár a manifestation of Ripley, right? Was she a pretender who actually, has some talent in music? And I don't know that there's an answer. I don't have an answer to that, but I do think it got me thinking.
It's very interesting questions. I mean, it poses a lot of interesting questions, right? And I like that the film also keeps a lot of mystery about it that we don't necessarily get revealed. Like, who is doing the live streams of her several times throughout the film? There are theories online that Francesca and Olga kind of struck up a friendship, and it's the two of them live FaceTiming to each other, essentially. Like, and all the texts are the two of them. As one, when Francesca is watching her sleep, two, when Olga is watching her at her book signing, and they're both kind of talking about how terrible she is. That's one of the theories out there. But Todd Field doesn't say. And I think that's what's so fascinating, is he leaves so many of these mysteries for us to just think about and stew on and come up with our own ideas. And how does it make us feel? And I think that's what he's going for more with some of this, is like creating this unsettled feel with just everything going on in Tár's life.
Yeah. It's pretty great.
It's fantastic. Fascinating little tidbit. This film, the sound mix, it's interesting in the scope of like awards and stuff. One of the Oscars it wasn't nominated for was Best Sound, although I definitely feel it should have been in the running. This film starts in a mono mix, and over the course of the film, Todd Field had his sound designer slowly add more tracks as the film goes on over the course of the story. I think that's such a fascinating way to craft a story that's about music and sound and what it's bringing to the table. Would you have ever noticed that?
Yet another reason. No, because I watched it on an iPad across the aisle.
Well, on your second viewing.
On my second viewing. I didn't notice it. I probably would have noticed it if I'd had my spatial headphones in, but I just watched it on the TV, and I don't have a Very sophisticated. I don't have what you have.
Like, I wasn't paying attention. I was just taken by the story. But now I want to revisit it and really kind of watch how it moves, kind of slowly fills the space. Yeah.
That's pretty special.
Yeah. And just in the scope of all of this and the look of it too, Todd Field really, he wanted to shoot it in Germany. He wanted to use a German crew. He wanted to just use as much cast as he could from the place and find this story over there. And, with the look of the film and everything, I feel like there is this gray kind of tone to everything. It feels real world, but it also feels cold. And I think that's an important part of it because it definitely has a tone. Florian Hofmeister was the cinematographer for it and did a great job. Marco Bittner-Rosser was the production designer. Bina Daigeler was the costume design. It all feels excellent. And just in the scope of what you were saying about finding the right look for Lydia, watching her get fit with the perfect outfit, I think it all had to be perfect, and I think it is.
Yeah, I think it is too. What a strong comeback. I mean, what was it, 16 years for Todd Field?
2006 was Little Children, I believe. He did In the Bedroom was that 2001? He spoke out about this, how hard it is to get money to make a movie like this. And that was one of the struggles he had. Like over the course of that time, he had a number of unrealized projects that fell apart. So it wasn't like he was spending from 2006 to now trying to get Tar off the ground, but just a lot of different projects. And it's hard. And he also said, Cate Blanchett is the only person that I want to do this with. And so had to wait for her. Like, there were a lot of elements that went into this, but it speaks to the struggles to actually make an original film.
Can you imagine anybody else but Cate?
I mean, if I went through the list, I probably could, but I feel like Cate Blanchett just gives such a performance here that is so rich and nuanced and terrifying and powerful. Like, I don't want to imagine anyone else playing the role,
Yeah, me neither. I think he's fantastic. Again, one movie. He's a one-hit wonder for me.
Well, watch the other two.
Okay.
Now you need to watch the other two.
All right, I will.
What do you think of the rest of the cast? Noémie Merlant plays Francesca, and of the principals, I mean, we mentioned Mark Strong as Elliot. Nina Haas plays Sharon. Thoughts on the rest of the cast? Oh, and Julian Glover, of course, plays kind of her old mentor.
Yes, and I mean, I think all of them are. Julian Glover was fun to see in this film. He was a surprise, but I think the other two women, her partner and assistant, I think they balance out kind of the spectrum disorder that is Tar, right? Like, and the fact that it centers around Krista, another presumably strong female character that we don't get to know very well, only through her absence, and what she inflicts on Tar's psyche. I think all of their performances absolutely live up to Blanchett's. Like, they're just terrific.
They're having to play off of a big character. And it's interesting watching Noémie play Francesca, because that's a challenging role, playing an assistant to somebody like this. And how do you do that? But she's perfect in the way she plays that. And Nina Haas as Sharon is like the heart of this film. In a film that, we're largely watching a pretty cold, manipulative character, but Sharon has some powerful scenes as she recognizes a lot of what's happening and how Lydia behaves and goes along with it, because it's her partner. And I found like the final confrontation that she has with Lydia so powerful when she's just like, we are in this together and you never warned me that there was a danger for our family, and you should have. And like that speaks to exactly how powerful, just like how strong of a character she is. And that, I don't know, I really found so much to enjoy in Nina Haas in her performance here.
Yeah, very sweet.
Yeah. And that line, like Lydia says, how cruel of you to define a relationship as transactional. This goes to how she manipulates other people. Like, she's saying that to manipulate Sharon. And Sharon says, there's only one relationship you've ever had that wasn't. And she's sleeping in the room next door. Apparently, this hasn't even crossed your mind.
Right.
And like, what a gut punch of a line.
So good.
Yeah. Wow.
So good.
Yeah, it's a great film.
Great film.
We didn't mention the composer for it aside from all the music, but she won for Joker. Hildur Gudnadottir. Hildur Gudnadottir.
Gudnadottir.
She delivers a nice score that fits in well with this world as well.
Yes, I love it, and you get a nice sense of style and the way music interacts and the choices for when not to use music. There are a lot of sequences in here that are unscored and very powerful. Lets the classical stuff really fit.
Well, and that's in a movie about music and conducting. When do you use the pieces you're using? When do you bring in score? I imagine that's complex for the director and the composer to figure that out.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, any last thoughts with this one?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, then we'll be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Enzo Bellomo, Oriole Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.
Hey listeners, it's Andy, and I'm here to see if you've tried Audible yet. With an incredible selection of audiobooks, it is the perfect way to dive deeper into the stories upon which some of your favorite films are based. Audible members get a credit every month to redeem on any audiobook they like, plus access to a huge Plus catalog of podcasts, originals, and more. Just imagine listening to the books that inspired movies like The Bourne Identity, Moneyball, or sci-fi classics like Dune. The best part? You can try Audible free for 30 days and get your first audiobook on them. It's a great way to experience storytelling while supporting this podcast. To get started, go to thenextreel.com/audible or text The Next Reel to 500-500. Listen to incredible audiobooks and support the show today. That's thenextreel.com/audible.
Awards. Andy, how to do at the award season? Did it win everything?
It was nominated for a lot. It performed better than The Fabelmans, but it's still, I think it's one of those films. I think there was a lot of recognition for how great this film was. It had 75 wins with 270 other nominations. And interestingly, this was only the fourth film in history to win the London, New York, Los Angeles, and National Society of Film Critics Awards.
Wow.
The other three, LA Confidential, Schindler's List, The Social Network.
What?
That's a good club.
We haven't talked about one of those.
Yeah. And that's the only one of the whole bunch that actually won an Oscar for Best Picture, interestingly.
Wow.
Yeah, I think what you see with this is, in the scope of awards, the critics, I think, were more favorable and more apt to give the film awards than some of the other things where, other things were taken into account. At the Oscars, it had 6 nominations, didn't win any. Cate Blanchett was nominated for Best Actress, but lost to Michelle Yeoh in Everything Everywhere. Same thing with Best Picture, Best Directing, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Film Editing, all losing to Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Best Cinematography losing to All Quiet on the Western Front. At the DGA Awards, the reason we're here, Todd Field was nominated for Best Director, but lost to the Daniels at Everything Everywhere All at Once. And so I was curious, as I have been in this series, where did Todd Field win Best Director? Well, at the Sunset Film Circle Awards, San Francisco Bay Area Film Critics Circle Awards, the Boston Society of Film Critics Awards, London Critics Film Circle Awards, LA Film Critics Association Awards, Indiana Film Journalists Association Awards, and the International Online Cinema Awards.
Well, that's something.
Yeah.
This Everything Everywhere All at Once, it sounds like a real banger. I hope we like it.
I hope we do too.
How to do at the box office? Did this adult-oriented drama tragedy make any money?
Well, Todd Field had $25 million for his film, which is $27 million in today's dollars. The movie opened in Venice September 1st, then October 7th, 2022, limited opposite Lyle Crocodile. I don't know why we haven't talked about that on the show. Amsterdam, and the limited release of Triangle of Sadness. This landed in 23rd place. The movie slowly expanded eventually to almost 1,100 screens and getting up to 9th place in the box office. This ended up earning $6.8 million domestically and $22.4 million internationally for a total gross of almost $31.5 million in today's dollars. That lands the film with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $28.3 thousand. Let's hope it actually was a profit with marketing, prints, all that sort of stuff. Who knows? They always say it's double, but it's so hard to say these days because numbers that they actually provide you just never know how accurate they are.
Yeah, right. Well, I loved it. Glad we talked about it. Glad to hear it. Totally worth it.
If it wasn't for Everything Everywhere All at Once of 2022, this was my favorite film of the year. And it's interesting because I hold them both in such high esteem. They're both like such perfect films for me. And I think what I end up finding as I watch these two films is Everything Everywhere I have an emotional connection to that I find Tár also like emotionally connecting, but in a different sort of way. And it's, I think, the heart that draws me into Everything Everywhere that really kind of just bumps that up just enough to kind of push it ahead.
Yeah.
But this one, I mean, it's a perfect film. It is just stunning. This is a film that should be studied.
2 stars. Quibbles.
All right. We'll be right back for our ratings. But first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, Joseph Kosinski's Top Gun Maverick.
What do we have here? God, here I thought we were special.
Fellas, this here's Bagman.
Hangman.
Whatever.
What the hell kind of mission is this?
Everyone here is the best there is. Who the hell are they gonna get to teach us?
Captain Pete Maverick Mitchell. Let me be perfectly blunt. You are not my first choice. You are here at the request of Admiral Kazansky, a.k.a. Iceman. He seems to think that you have something left to offer the Navy. What that is, I can't imagine.
With all due respect, sir, I'm not a teacher. Just want to manage expectations.
What the hell? Good morning, aviators. This is your captain speaking.
And we're off.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
We're going into combat on a level no living pilot's ever seen.
Not even him. You think up there you're dead. Believe me.
My dad believed in you. I'm not going to make the same mistake.
Someone's not coming back from this.
Those are your pilots. Anything happens to them.
Smoke in the air!
You will never forgive yourself.
No turning back now.
Come on!
Jeez!
Having any fun yet?
Hey, film fans, Andy here from The Next Reel. Can you believe we have recorded almost 700 episodes dissecting and discussing movies? It's a testament to our incredible community of listeners like you. Your support means the world to us, and one great way to show that support is by sporting some Next Reel merch. We've got shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, all featuring designs from movies we've covered on the show. Looking for a place to start? Grab a tee or hoodie with the Next Reel logo to rep your love of film. We've got our auteur theory design in there, along with our Patient Zero, plus many designs from movies we've discussed on the show. So head to thenextreel.com/merch and grab some gear today. Every purchase helps us keep the mics hot for our weekly movie chats. And thanks as always for being part of the Next Reel community.
All right, Andy, let's have it. thenextreel.com/letterboxd if you want to join us. Letterboxd.com/thenextreel if you want to just see our plan. And let's do it. Where are we going to take those hearts? Where are we going to put them?
This is it's hard to say this is such a perfect film, but only 3 stars. No, this is straight up 5-star and a heart film for me. It's just, I can't get over how amazing this experience of this film is. We didn't even talk about the group of women at the massage parlor at the end. Another what is crazy little scene.
I know. I loved it.
Yeah.
So many great scenes.
Yeah.
This is a movie full of all the great scenes.
All the great scenes are in this movie. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So that's, did you say your rating?
Well, it's 5 stars and a heart, Andy. How could I do anything less?
Just making sure.
I'm the one who's been making the joke this whole time.
Did you rank this on Letterboxd after your airplane watching? Did you look back?
I told you.
I'm just making sure.
I would not do
I know
that.
you said that, but I just wanted to make sure that it's not marked as 2 viewings on your account. All right. Well, you can find me at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete at Pete Wright, and you can find us at The Next Reel over on Letterboxd, where you will see 5 stars and a heart for this film. So what did you think about Tar? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
I think you should go first.
Okay. I went to the bottom of the barrel. There's a lot of hate for this movie. 1/2 star by Nouvelle Giselle, who says, a movie created for the 1%ers or pretentious film nerds. It moves at a glacial pace, has insufferable characters, and a vague plot. From the start, during the eye-rolling rant about classical music, it becomes clear that the narrative is geared towards a super niche audience. It's a huge struggle to watch. If I were to point out a movie of the glaring disconnect within Hollywood, this film is a total example. It's clearly made for industry insiders and cinephiles, but is so unappealing and inaccessible to most moviegoers, including myself, I can't possibly recommend it. Save yourself the 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ouch.
I assume that we have to fit into the pretentious film nerds because we're not in the 1%.
Right. Yeah, because my only response to that is go listen to some Mahler, bro. Okay, so I've got one that I think you'll find astute and from a viewer who has an incredible attention to detail. Are you ready?
I can't wait.
This was incredible. Definitely one of the best films I've ever seen in my life. I think Cate Blanchett will definitely win an award for this, don't you? I wasn't expecting Ryan Reynolds in this, but I was happy when I saw him. He gave a great performance and I could surely see him getting some award buzz too. 3 stars. I don't even know what to do with that.
Is that Mark Strong? Is that who is the Ryan Reynoldsiest?
I don't know. The assistant conductor? The old man? He's quite a character actor, Ryan Reynolds. He just blends into everything.
I don't know if they thought is it like somebody who has a lot of makeup work on them, and it's like they mistook. Oh, that's Ryan Reynolds, like under all that makeup.
Yes.
Or like what?
Because Ryan Reynolds just blends into every part that he plays. He's a chameleon. Yeah. That's what he's known as in Hollywood. Ryan Reynolds. Oh, Ray. He's a chameleon.
Ray. Oh my gosh.
Thanks so much, Letterboxd.